Attention gamers, playing bot lane and low elo is punishment. Let's keep it real unless you are a streamer who plays 30 games a day or someone who has played this game at a level where prize money is on the table. This lane in low elo feels like someone slowly lowered a 1,000-pound bag of dicks onto you and now you can't breathe, plus it's 2025, so if you try to get it off you're homophobic, but don't worry, I got you. I've gotten analytical as fuck and noticed that starting in patch 15.13, this angry amputee is one of the highest win rates every single patch, so I went full-blown Sherlock Holmes and went to find out what changed in patch 15.13 and found out this is when Riot released Spirit Blossoms Ed. Ha! Gay! I then studied stats only to learn that armor is apparently good against at least one of the champs you'll run into down here in Hell on Earth, which led me to the realization that Zhonya's is bullshit. So if I paired Grumpy Gramps with the counter pick to most of the locals down here and all of a sudden I'm like OJ down here, aka killing bitches and getting away with it, so stick around to see how after I wasted 11 minutes of my pathetic life just to get into a match so I can play the game, and I will show you how Swain bot rushing Zhonya's is the answer to all your low elo problems. Alright, so breaking down a recent ranked game, you will see we have a very standard setup as I have the dead dock worker supporting me against some Spirit Blossom Legolas simp and a seafood platter that will be keeping me nice and fed throughout the game. Right off the bat, literally level 1, you see Pike trying to spork that floating octopus, so if you didn't know this was silver elo before, you know now, as a full-blown slat battle shit fest breaks out where my support dies and then I give theirs the courtesy of some privacy for their death before both carries look at each other, nod and agree we don't speak about the homicides that went down here. Then if I'm being honest, I was thinking, hey, maybe we should just keep our dicks inside of our pants, everything zippered up until at least level 3 when we get abilities, but he's just like, screw that foo-foo lame ass shit and starts prison shanking Tentacle Tommy. I contribute by decorating the ground with a few skill shots and then I puke off a bloody hemorrhoid out to kill him off. The pattern continues of this Pike being more aggressive than Bradley Martin when someone steals his hat, and this kamikaze mentality gets him killed every time, but at least we know that char-grilled calamari is on the menu after this one. I'm left pretty low in health because my skillless limp dick of an amputated arm didn't know how to react in that last fight to match my Pike's dipshit energy, so I ended up just getting poked down and doing nothing. But the good thing about being in this lane where the locals have no source of self-defense is that when Bambi comes down, I can continue firing my skill shots into the wrong zip code and this Ashe will still be shit out of luck while giving me the shutdown she was worth courtesy of my reckless Pike. At this point I'm really reaching the limit where I need to take a piss break back in Fountain. My health is starting to look bleak, but whoever is driving this Pike clearly ripped off the brake pedal, and if I'm being honest I am all for it, as even with less health than a type 2 diabetic who has a lifetime membership to Pizza Hut all-you-can-eat buffets, I can contribute my full kit to the cause of making their support absolutely useless. Eventually I'm just like, okay bro, I know you hookers need to constantly put your bodies on the line to generate income, but please give it a breather as we are both out of breath, and I'm not trying to get nocturned, but that was like saying Beetlejuice 3 times. Unfortunately for this guy who is used to turning the lights off and flat out urinating on helpless ADCs, I have tools that they are missing, which in this case prevents me from giving a very large shutdown that likely would have resulted in him snowballing and target ulting me with no counter play for the rest of the game. And if you disagree, you just haven't experienced being a traditional ADC in a game against a fed Nocturne. At this point they took the liberty of thinking they deserved Dragon, but me and my suicide bomber of a support would beg to differ as I turn on the COPD blood transfusion vacuum effect, but after eating nothing but seafood all game I leave as apt to himself, as I'm more concerned with beating up the guy who has his fingers on the light switch. That said, with the priority target down, I weirdly find myself craving a little bit of fish for dessert as I walk up and politely ask that oceanic idiot to sit still so that my Pike can dash deep into danger, which long story short lands us another kill while my own support defies the odds by finding a way to die in the process himself again. For a brief period we returned to the status quo of Velko's whipping purple shit at me while I failed to properly last hit, but turns out I looked at the mini-map for the first time in my life to know that light switch Lenny is up top, so when the power gets cut I know that I don't have to assume the fetal position and we can surprise this Ashe hole by getting right up in her face, which ends poorly for her. Then I know there's already been more action, more fights and more deaths than an entire LCS Finals series so far in this match, but it's actually only 12 minutes in, which means there are still plates on the towers, which for a low elo ADC also means time to overextend like a total dumbass, which is like a custom addressed party invitation that's sent out individually to half my team, and you better believe we are all RSVPing hells to the yes to that particular party. A few minutes go by and we see their Velcos trying to path back to lane using a shortcut, and we are both acting like power-hungry traffic cops, being like, no bitch, you take the long detour, but he is insistent in going this way, so Pike X marks the spot where his dumbass dies for the 8th time. Then, if you are wondering, this is the skill level present in this game that is still working like a charm. Anyways, the enemy team is invading my jungle just like my mom invades my browser cache after the whole lube titty on her work computer incident, and if I were a standard marksman in this case, seeing each of my co-workers die one at a time leaving me in the middle of 3 enemies, I would be dead faster than you can say FF15, but this kit plus the ability to paint myself gold has me thriving in the chaos. This should have been an easy triple, but I decided to dethrone Sophie Rain as the biggest pussy on the internet by running away instead. At one point I was left alone briefly in lane, but I knew I had a butch cut lesbian flying it on Valor Airlines, so I put a hemorrhoid bomb behind the piggies to herd them back towards me, and then I decided to donate an ult to the cause as a generous grandpa, even though it wasn't necessary. Anyways, if you are wondering how good of a time their Ash was having, I would say that there was nothing she could do to cleanse the fact that we are like pesty flies, and marksmen at this rank are shit, so we stuck to her until she passed away. Turns out her support was on the other side of the map, assisting in making my own teammates more useless than a barbed wire dildo, and even though I could tell the octopus that ulting is rude and punishable by death, my team wasn't exactly doing so hot either. The enemy team was working on getting another free objective while my jungler was off learning her ABCs or some shit, but luckily their support was a reliable source of income for all eternity, and their Silas didn't get the memo that he's on the wrong side of this particular wall. That said, we may have been in a bloodbath that was looking bleaker by the minute, but at least the side quest of making their Ash contemplate uninstalling this game was still on pace. At one point, when my Pike's idiotic aggression had him overextended for the 30th time and I was stuck unironically trying to peel for my support, I found myself in a situation where a normal marksman would have died, come back to life and died again, but because I can turn on the vortex of virginity, I ended up living to tell my kids the story of how the worst twin I've ever seen got a triple kill. I desperately wanted to stop fighting, but my team was alive again, which is so uncharacteristic of them that they were looking to get back to the comfort of their black and white screens, and I was stuck as the team's babysitter, throwing oversized claws to peel for them, which at some points was actually turning into exactly what our team needed to turn the tides of the fights. It was starting to feel like the objective of this game wasn't to kill the Nexus, but rather win a round of King of the Hill by Dragon Pit, as we were practically team deathmatching that shit, but my teammates were melting like marshmallows over a bonfire and I was left alone. I tried my best to look like a piece of the popcorn that my Lelia was eating while watching me die to 2 of them, but the good news is once both me and the last piece she was eating were finished, she decided she would stop being a grade A vagina and join back in the fight, which ended up going well for us. We had a 35 death win shitter, but because I was literally 8-2 and 17, you could see the positivity reeking through our in-game comms. Instead of dying instantly when getting picked by 2 chains, I had the stamina and blood-sucking abilities to come out on top. So in summary, the thing that is solving all my low elo problems is unfortunately not Swain with Azanya's rush, because even with this I can't win a fucking game. If you are smart and saw that twist coming at the end, how about this one?